Hi, I'm Megan at the Pituitary Foundation. For those of you not familiar with the Foundation, we provide support for the 70,000 and more people in the UK who are affected by disorders of the pituitary gland, as well as their families, friends and carers. We want to ensure that every person affected by a pituitary condition has a timely diagnosis and access to high quality treatment, information and support. We have a dedicated nurse helpline, online and printable resources, and we work with leading medical experts to improve patient care. I'm really excited to be having this talk as part of our Pituitary Awareness Month 2022 Living Well programme, and to be joined by Dr Sue Jackson for the Stress and Wellbeing session. So welcome, Sue. Thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you as part of our Awareness Month programme. So would you like to introduce yourself briefly?
Hi, yeah, I'm Dr. Sue Jackson. I'm an independent chartered psychologist. My specialism is the link between physical and mental health. And we may or may not be joined by my ginger assistant, called Garfield, who, he's got a habit of joining in the sessions too.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you. Well, over to you, Sue. Take it away.
Okay, so, woohoo. Okay, so this session is on stress and well-being. It's general stress. So because, as Megan's just been describing, the Pituitary Foundation supports individuals with a pituitary problem rather, but also their friends, family and carers, I've tried to make this as broad as possible. So it's as relevant to as many people as possible. So what I'm going to do is to talk about how we recognise stress and how it affects us, different kinds of stress, and then ideas for how we manage stress and live well. And there's various issues. So sleep and lifestyle factors, time management, how we build resilience and active restoration, as well as some thoughts on quiet time. There's an awful lot of ideas because when I was originally asked to do this, the suggestion was I put in lots of hints and tips, which is what I have done. So there's an awful lot. So what I would say is, particularly in the second half, when we're looking for ideas for managing stress and living well, think about picking 2 or 3 things that you think that you would like to do, rather than trying to do all of it, which would be stressful, overwhelming, and totally not what is intended. Okay. So how do we define stress? So the World Health Organization defines stress as the reaction people may have when presented with demands and pressures that are not matched to their knowledge and abilities and which challenge their ability to cope. And that covers a lot of the different stresses that we can experience. I don't think it covers all of them, if I'm honest, and you'll see why I think that as we kind of go on and look at the different kinds of stress. But as a working definition, it's actually about that sense of things are happening to me and I don't think I can cope with this. You might have heard of the fight or flight response. That's another way that we describe stress. It's also been updated these days, so we don't have just fight or flight. So your stress response, as it says on the slide, is your natural response to danger or to stress. It's intended as a protection mechanism. Without it, you would be very, very vulnerable. It's a mechanism by which our body prepares us to deal with a threat. So you have a number of choices. You can hit it, as in fight with it, or you can run away from it, which is the flight component. But as I said, these days, there are 2 other components that we also have. So we have freeze, which is where literally something happens and you freeze in the moment. So some of you might have had the experience at school where you were called up to the front of the class to answer a question or write something on the board. And when you were sat in your seat, you knew the answer. But when you got to the front of the class, the stress made you freeze and everything you thought you knew disappears out of your ear. And that's it. You're just frozen and it makes your face burn and it's not nice. The other one that we have now is called fawn. And it's spelled the same way as a baby deer. So FAWN. And what it means is a reaction to stress where someone becomes very submissive or behaves in quite a childlike manner, can happen quite commonly in people who've been traumatized. So they can't fight or flight. The stress has been chronic, and so they, over time, they kind of revert to freeze and fawn rather than fight or flight. So, as I say, used to be just the two. Now there are these other two ways of also describing it. So you may recognize yourself in those, or you may not. Stress and worry, I quite often get asked, what's the difference? So stress, on the left-hand side there, we've got stress, experiencing stress. So stress affects the way you think, it affects the way you feel, it affects your body, your physiology, and it affects your behavior. So what you say or what you do. The example I usually give is something like acute stress. So acute stress is something that is very short-lived, it's situation specific. It could be something simple like you're going out of the house and you can't find your keys. And up until that point, your morning was going fine, and now you can't find your keys. Literally everything changes. So your cognitions will start to be with well, where are they? And it's that kind of, it can spiral. It affects how you feel. So you might suddenly go hot and cold, or you might suddenly feel slightly sick. It affects your body. So some people say, oh, it makes them go all clammy. Their stomach suddenly starts reacting, and it changes your behavior. This isn't a nice thing to do, but if you ever watch anyone who's lost their keys, it's quite funny because they go into headless chicken mode, and they do this kind of searching where they might look in one place 5 times and not somewhere else at all, and it's all a bit random, because that's what stress does with you. Logic goes out of the window. It's very much about a kind of an overwhelming sensation in that moment. Once you found your keys again, it wears off. It takes about 20 minutes for a strong stress response to actually properly wear off, and all the chemicals that your body's created to support that to kind of go out of your system. The difference between stress and worry is your brain becomes a source of worry in it, or source of stress in its own right. So on the right hand side there, you'll see that we've got stress, but we've got some extra arrows that have suddenly appeared, and that's because the thoughts that you're having at various times are actually making you feel stressed. They're starting your stress response. Quite often what happens is you're doing activities of daily living. So it might be the washing up. When we're doing tasks that are maybe not so interesting to us, our brain quite often takes the opportunity to mess about. And one of the things it will do is to think about stuff that is stressful and difficult, because it thinks you're not doing anything else. It's trying to be helpful, and actually it's torturing you. And so your thoughts become that literally they trigger your stress response. So you can be washing up and thinking about something like the talk you've got to give tomorrow, or you could be thinking about a conversation that you had early in the day that you found stressful and difficult, and kind of replaying it in your mind. In terms of the difference between the two, stress tends, as I say, acute stress is situation specific, and once it's over, it's over. You're kind of worry, you carry your head around with you all the time. And so it can strike at any time. Activities of daily living like driving, doing the washing up, anything that's habitual, your brain will take that opportunity given half a chance. And when we go to bed at night is the other hot time. So people can be really tired, and say when they put their head on the pillow, that's when their brain suddenly kicks off. Or they get to sleep fine, but they can't stay asleep, and they woke up in the early hours and their brain goes, aha, you are awake. Let us go over these things that are stressful and difficult. So acute stress. We also have chronic stress. So chronic stress it tends to be described in terms of being something that's ongoing, and we typically say that it's environmental. And what we mean by that is there is something in your environment that is not letting up. So that could be a difficult relationship, either at home or at work. It could be other work problems. So lots of people are sick and your in tray is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Could be health issues. Health issues are notorious for being associated with chronic stress. Because part of the problem with having a chronic health condition is you very rarely, in fact, with some of the pituitary conditions, you never get a day off from it. It's something you've always got to manage, always got to be aware of, and to take your medication, etc. There are other other state where actually that's not the case, where you do actually get some periods of time where everything's fine and you're not having to take medication and so on. So yeah, so those are the difference between stress and worry, and two different types of stress. So what does stress do to us? So on the left there, you've got the bodily changes. Makes all kinds of changes to you. So some people say it changes their vision, and they're very aware of that. Some people say they get dry mouth because your body stops producing saliva. Basically, when you're stressed, your body kind of shuts down a whole lot of things it thinks aren't helpful and changes things to try and make you so that you can react more quickly to the threat in your situation. Hence, your airways widen to let in more oxygen, because potentially you're going to need to run away. And your heart starts pumping harder, which is why some people feel the palpitations, because it's decided your muscles actually need some assistance to kind of assist with the running away. Blood's diverted away from skin to the muscles. So some people say they kind of go a bit grey, which is why you also get kind of clammy. Your skin sweats to cool your muscles down, which is what kind of, again, it's part of this kind of getting you into optimal shape so you can fight and flight. And your muscles tense. And so on the right hand side, you've got the stress symptoms that people kind of talk about, the breathlessness, the dizziness. Not everybody gets all of these, and different kinds of stress can affect you in different ways, which I think is one of the things that can make it difficult for people to spot when they're getting stressed. And some individuals have been brought up to believe that they're hypochondriac, and so they tend to ignore their stress symptoms, so they carry on regardless, and they just ignore them, and then so they don't recognize them as being a source of stress. And that means when it gets really difficult, it's quite hard for them to understand that it's the stress that's doing it to them. And lots of GPs will say that they have patients and they say to the patients, these symptoms you're having are stress related, but the people don't necessarily, because they don't pay attention to it at the time that they're experiencing the stress, it doesn't make any sense to them. And GPs kind of struggle to help people to understand, because the amount of training GPs get about mental health issues is really small in their curriculum. I think it's something like half a day, and that's to cover all of the mental health issues. So that stress through anxiety all the way to severe and enduring issues like mania and psychosis. So it's not a lot. And it's no surprise that they have difficulties. Question I quite often get again is there a difference between stress and pressure? A long time ago now, like about 20 years ago, and it happens every so often, to be honest, it's cyclic. Someone will say that actually stress is important and it's not all bad. So about 20 years ago, someone tried to come up with this idea of what they call eustress. So that's stress with EU in front of it. And what that was supposed to indicate was that not all stress is evil. And what this graph shows is actually not having enough to do is as much of a problem as having too much to do. So one of the things that we quite often see in people who've had a sudden change in their circumstances, so for instance, individuals who are coming up to retirement, back in the day, there was quite a problem with high levels of depression in individuals who were retiring, because they hadn't actually thought about what they were going to do in their retirement. They just suddenly stopped work and they didn't have enough to do. They had no plans. So nowadays we have a lot of employers do retirement planning to try and help people avoid the depression and the increased levels of alcohol consumption and some of the other behaviours that went with not having enough to do, having no structured time. The peak in the middle, the idea is that for every individual, there's an optimal level of stress or pressure, depending on what you want to call it, which is where you're actually rocking it. It's your peak of, this is how much pressure I need in order to get out of bed in the morning and do my best thing. The problem is that because we're individuals and with the sum of our experiences, your creative peak can shift from day to day. And so what worked for you yesterday may well not work for you today. So your creative peak, the amount of pressure you need may well be in a different place, and people quite often find that really frustrating. When I used to run a stress management course, we used to talk about how it's kind of akin to playing pin the tail on the donkey in the dark, because it keeps shifting and moving, and people find that really frustrating. And you can't compare yourself with other people because we're all different. The things that stress me will not be the same as the things that stress you. And stress is a subjective experience. If you're saying that you're finding something stressful and difficult, I can't tell you that you're not. I have no way of disproving your experience. And to be honest, as a psychologist, I have no reason to do that. But it's another reason why, as individuals, we can feel quite isolated, because there are these differences, even within families. The difference between, or the pressure point that people need in order to be the best self is different, even though you're all living within the same environment, because you're all different individuals. There are some things, though, for all that we are individuals, there are some things that we can all find stressful, no matter who we are. So Maslow, bless him, did some research. He was interested in what helps us to be our best self. But he also recognized that as he did his research, that there are things that kind of prevent us from doing that. So physiological needs, if your physiological needs are not being met, so that's your need for air to breathe, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, your ability to have a family, your basic needs, you are going to find that very stressful. And it doesn't matter who you are, you will find that stressful and difficult. Same goes for safety needs. It doesn't matter who you are. If your personal security is threatened, if someone wanders into your room with a gun, everyone is going to find that stressful and difficult and potentially traumatic. Doesn't matter who you are. Likewise, if your health is threatened, if someone gives you a cancer diagnosis, yes, you are going, no matter who you are going to find that stressful and difficult. We vary in the extent to which we need to engage with other people. But all of us, we're basically social animals, and we need to have a sense that we exist and matter to someone else, even if it's just one person. So relationships actually matter. There are some individuals who, because of their personal experiences, actually don't like other humans, and their relationships tend to be either with themselves or with other animals. Humans are basically sophisticated worms, nothing grander than that. And we don't always behave very well to each other. Other things that all of us find quite stressful is where someone is basically attacks our self-esteem or our self-confidence and kind of make us feel little and small, kind of say things that belittle us. Again, it doesn't matter who you are. Those things can hurt. That's why social media is such a double-edged sword to some extent. So there are a lot of things that potentially we can find stressful and difficult, and the particular mix that you will find stressful and difficult is going to differ between individuals. All of those things will get in the way of you being able to be the best that you can be. And as a society at the moment, I'm particularly mindful that we're going through a particularly difficult time. We have healthcare in disarray. We have a cost of living crisis going on. Russia has kicked off a war in the Ukraine, which is not helping anybody. I'm not entirely sure what they were trying to do when they did that, but hey, it's kind of, some things are just inexplicable. All of those things are stressful and difficult. They're all having impacts on us. So prices are going up, etc. And lots of people are going to be finding things tough and stressful and difficult going forward. So in terms of stress and recovery, kind of thinking about, okay, so how do we manage this? If your stress levels are generally low and you have sufficient recovery, the idea is that actually you can kind of manage. I used to have people come on the stress management course and I say, what do you want to achieve by coming here? And they said they wanted no stress. And it's like, that's not a sensible thing to want, because actually without it, you would be very unsafe. It's about living with it. So stress that is, demands and things that you need to do, but also ways that you can recover from it so that you keep life in balance. So this course isn't, or this session isn't just about stress, it's also about well-being. How do you live well? So you need the demands on you to be within what you can cope with, and you need enough to be able to recover from them. If you have high stress and insufficient recovery for whatever reason, so it could be because there aren't enough people in your workplace, then yes, it's going to get very messy, and the stress is going to kind of spread around. And that's one thing stress does. It communicates itself very easily between individuals. You can actually be in quite stressful and difficult circumstances, but actually you can, because you can change things in your situation, then actually that improves things. And so the stress is high, but actually you can manage it because there are things in place to kind of help you to do that. I have no idea where you are in your particular situation. I hope you're not stuck in the middle. But hopefully there will be some ideas as we go into the second half that will kind of help you think about how you might want to manage your stress. So these quotes are kind of general things that I find helpful to bear in mind. So one of them, that top one there, life isn't logical. It's not. It just happens. And the best anyone can do, again, no matter who they are, is just try to deal with the present as well as they can. And it's useful to remember that. Okay, no one could do it. It is what it is. You have to deal with what's in front of you. The second one, don't ignore the small daily differences that you can make, which over time add up to big differences that we often cannot foresee. So some of the ideas, some of the hints and tips that I'm going to come on and talk about are actually quite small, but actually it doesn't matter. Those small things can actually have a really, really powerful impact. So it's not the size of the stress management thing that you do, it's the fact that you do it regularly. And if something is important, you do have to make time for it. Yeah. It's not that straightforward though. I have discovered that I need to remind myself to do things. So I have a reminder on my phone to tell me to take a break in the morning, because I'm dreadful for starting work really early and then just going on and on and on and on, and then getting to lunchtime and feeling dreadful. So I have to remind myself to take a break by setting an alarm, because it matters. I also have a daily checklist of simple things that I need to do that I know make a difference if I do them. And as I do them, as I go through the day, I tick them off so that I know I've actually taken that time. And I do feel better for doing it. So mixed blessings. So I've said several times that we are all individual. We are very individual in terms of how we need to spend our energy and where we get our energy back from. And there are 4 different ways, if you like, of thinking about where does your energy come from. So what things do you do that could potentially be a drain or potentially be really, really helpful in terms of getting your energy back? So emotional energy. These are individuals who like being connected to other people. So people, if you like, but not extroverts. They're in the box next door in the social energy group. Emotional energy is about people who actually they like doing nice things for other people. We kind of call it emotional labor. It's this idea of individuals who are quietly kind. Quite a lot of people who work in hospitality, for instance, they actually really like doing things that enable people to have a good time, to be happy, to be comfortable. For individuals for whom this is the thing, what drains them is difficult relationships and getting caught into difficult and vicious arguments where it's kind of, there's a lot of unpleasantness flowing around and no opportunity to actually intervene and kind of make things okay. What can be very, very beneficial is doing something simple like keeping a gratitude diary to kind of keep you connected with those values of kindness and patience and good connection with other people. people in this group tend to have, they don't tend to have lots and lots of acquaintances. They tend to have a very small group of very close friends, and those are individuals to spend time with and to kind of stay in contact with, in order to kind of help you keep your energy levels and recoup yourself if you're kind of experiencing stress. The group next door, social energy, the kind of extroverts, people in the sense of party, and they like being in the thick of things, they like making things happen, having conversations, jokes, that kind of thing. These individuals, what stresses them is actually having to spend time on their own, whereas the group in the kind of emotional energy are actually quite good at being by themselves and having that reflective time. The group in the social are not. That's really not their thing. They need those connections with other people, and so they actually need to have things that they can be involved in, and kind of getting involved in their local community or wherever. That's what kind of helps them. Physical group, some people actually, exercise is their thing. It actually really, moving is really important. I saw a thing which made me laugh, and it said that some people need to think about themselves as, rather than fancy worms, as the equivalent of a human spaniel. They actually need to move in order to be okay. And that means kind of having time to go for a walk at lunchtime, having time to kind of do some stretches, having time to, I don't know, whatever your physical hobby is, if you're play hockey or whatever, it's having time to do that really matters. And then the mental energy group. These are individuals who get a little happy buzz, like me, when they tick something off their list of things to do. They're big into lifelong learning. They like kind of coming across, they're a bit kind of culture vulture. Books, plays, all of that sort of stuff. All of those things are kind of going to feed and help. Having some kind of creative outlet is particularly important for this group as well. What they find stressful is being stuck in a rut and doing something that is not particularly interesting, and quite dull and boring. They find that quite hard. Yeah, there's a confession for you. So we're all individuals. Some of these things will drain you out. Some of these things will really help you. Yeah, it's just a way to think about, am I doing the right things? Do I need to kind of think about making some time for some of these things? The other kinds of mixed blessings are things that we kind of look forward to and we have great expectations of. And they're not bad things. It's just that they come with a side helping of stress. So holidays, for instance, 2-week holiday, the research shows us is preceded by at least a week either side of increased stress, because you've got to kind of cram everything that you would have done in that 2 weeks into the week before to get ready. And then when you come back, stuff will have happened, and you've then got to deal with that when it comes back, when you come back. So long holidays, they are good, but actually they come with extra stress, unfortunately, because you've got to clear your diary to make the space for them. Leaving home, again, we all get ready to leave home. It's a thing that we do. Not all of us financially can afford to, so some individuals actually kind of stay home and don't leave their parental home. But leaving home, it's something you look forward to, but actually that when the reality hits, there's an awful lot involved in leaving home that is quite stressful and difficult. Romantic relationships can be a double-edged sword. Falling in love is lovely, but actually there can be difficulties. Likewise, having a child, all of the sleepless nights and everything else, though that's stressful and difficult, and it's something we don't always recognize. Christmas, we have big expectations of what Christmas will be, and putting a lot of people into a small space with a lot of sugar and alcohol. Yeah, that's going to have some interesting stressful side effects, and there's a lot of preparation that goes into making a good Christmas. Moving house, it might be to the house of your dreams, but actually packing everything up, moving them, unpacking it all, it's stressful. And so it's changing job. So there can be a lot of things that we have a lot of expectations from, where we actually end up experiencing some stress. If we are fortunate, the stress will kind of, we'll work out how to do these things to get the most out of them with the least amount of stress. but it's kind of, they are what they are. It's kind of, these things fluctuate. Over and above that, these are kind of some little things that you might want to think about that might be helpful. So hand massage. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. You can look some YouTube videos up if you want, of kind of different strategies you can use to do hand massage. I have hand cream in pretty much all of the rooms of the house. Just the act of rubbing the hand cream in, it's cheap and cheerful. It's nothing fancy or expensive, but actually doing that regularly, one, my hands are in pretty good condition, and two, it's a soothing thing. Looking after your feet, you expect them to take you everywhere, but actually ill-fitting shoes and dry skin, it can aggravate bag bats. It will make you feel more stressed and tired. So actually, morning and evening, I sit on the bathroom floor and rub cream into my feet, because actually, again, it's a soothing thing, but in looking after them, it also keeps my posture in good order and reduces the amount of back pain, etc. We all have five senses. Pleasing them is a useful thing to do. There's an approach called NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, that says that actually we tend to engage in the world using two of our senses more than the other three. So you might be more visual, or you might prefer sound, but actually doing something that pleases your senses. So drinking good coffee because it smells nice, wearing nice perfume again because it smells nice, looking at flowers, wearing clothes that are soft and kind of make you feel like someone's hugging you. It's kind of, yeah, they're nice things to do. Looking out for smiling faces might sound a bit random, but actually there's some literature around lowered mood, which suggests that actually when we're in lowered mood, we tend to look for things that reinforce. So we're more likely to pay attention to people who are frowning. But actually, if you make an effort to look for people who are smiling, it starts to shift your brain, or shifts your brain's focus rather onto something that's more positive, and so it kind of helps to lift the mood a bit. So looking out for smiling things, and again, looking out for the unusual, it's the same sort of thing. It's this idea of looking for quirky things and unusual things. You're kind of changing your brain's focus. You're not reinforcing the stress by focusing on that. You're actually actively looking for other things. Keeping a journal, some people actually find that that's really beneficial. I have two. I have one where I'm working out problems and issues and things that I kind of need to sort out. And I have what I call my happy book, which is where I keep nice things. So jokes that people have told me, or funny pictures, or on the rare occasion, compliments, that kind of thing. I keep them separate because if I am feeling stressed or difficult, I don't want to flip through my journal and be reminded about something that I'm still struggling with. I want to have a resource that I can look at that actually reminds me of nice things and good things that have happened. And the bottom one there, sitting on a bench with a cat, we've got benches in the front and back gardens now, and Garfield he's very adamant that we should sit on a bench with him in the evening. And you just sit on the bench with him. I tried taking a book outside and he told me that was unacceptable. It's just to sit there and just to chill and to and just see what's happening in the world, and it's a good thing to do. And not all of you will have a bench, and not all of you will have a cat, but if you do see a bench with or without a cat on it, just spending a few minutes sitting on it and just kind of decompressing is good for you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about sleep, and lifestyle issues, because actually if there's a fundamental thing for helping you to manage stress, then it would be sleep. It's fundamental in terms of it's setting you up right, if you like. So sleep is the kind of foundation, if you like. You also need to think about diet and exercise. This is not the big stick and beating you with it. In terms of sleep, one of the most important things is actually what we call rumination, reducing the amount of time you spend during the day, letting your brain kind of mess about with stuff and kind of going over and over things, but not actually in any constructive way. It's just going over and over them. The research tends to suggest that people who do that more during the day are more likely to experience trouble sleep at night. And we'll come on and look at what does active and passive restoration look like. But there are things that you can do that can kind of help in terms of improving your rest. In terms of diet, we used to kind of say, well, everyone should be eating low fat, low sugar, because those things are bad for you. And now it's turned out that actually the thing about fat was somebody thought it was a good idea. They thought fat was bad for you, but there was no research at the time to say that that was the case. Increasingly, it seems that each individual has a microbiome that is unique to them. And how you react to food varies between individuals. So for years and years and years, lots of people with diabetes have been turning up and the doctors have been going, you are not sticking to your diet. And they've done a lot of this, a lot of the finger. It now turns out that actually, yes, we have a glycemic index of how your body metabolizes food and turns it into sugar. But it turns out that actually the scientists, when they created that, used averages, they used midpoints, and what they never reported in their study was that there was a huge range of different responses to the different kinds of foods. So for some people, the low fat, low sugar, whatever, doesn't work. You have to find what will work for yourself. Now, the good news is that scientists are working towards getting much better at identifying what kind of diet would be good for each individual, but there is quite a way to go. So it's a case of trial and error. And exercise. So exercise in relation to stress is about reducing stress hormones and about stabilizing your health. It's got nothing to do with losing weight. It's just literally moving is good for you because that's what it does. So in terms of sleep and pain, we think it seems logical that if you're in pain, it's going to disrupt your sleep. Of course it is, because it's going to make it difficult for you to sleep. What now seems to be the case is that for some individuals who experience flare-ups of their conditions, it's the poor sleep that precedes the flare-up that actually seems to be implicated in the disruption in the inflammatory response. So actually it's the sleep kicks off the pain. And the additional little kicker seems to be that if you have a tendency towards negative thoughts or that disaster thinking, that kind of rumination that I was talking about, that will actually disrupt your sleep because it creates more, or it seems to be associated with increased nightmares and bad dreams. And the disrupted sleep then increases the likelihood of experiencing pain. And so the kind of antidote, if you like, is doing things that help you to feel contented, because that improves your sleep and reduces the likelihood of you having pain flare-ups. And that's true kind of, hopefully, there are a number of different conditions now that have been looked at where this seems to be the case. So if you need help with this, yes, it's worth talking to a GP and pharmacist about pain medication, because some of it can make sleeping problems worse and can actually induce nightmares and hallucinations. Some mindfulness techniques can be very helpful. There are two that are particularly good: the body scan and breathing exercises. Some people find that gentle massage twice a week, you can actually do that yourself rather than necessarily going and paying someone, because I'm aware that we're in a cost of living crisis. Light exercise, so this isn't going out and doing 90 minutes of football. This is kind of going for a walk or doing some yoga stretches and that kind of thing. Short afternoon nap, but only if absolutely needed. Having a warm shower or bath before bed because it helps you to feel more comfortable. Play music or natural sounds at bedtime. There's an app that you can get for smartphone called Insight Timer. It's got a lot of music and natural sounds on it, and it's even got these days a special button labeled sleep that you can press. And when you press the sleep button, all kinds of things come up. So there's ones to help you get off to sleep, and then there's another thing that you can press, and it says if you're awake in the night, it's got things to kind of help you manage that. Blue light has been shown to be particularly problematic for helping us get to sleep, and so things that emit blue light, like televisions, should not be in the bedroom. Alcohol can help you get off to sleep, but will cause increased sleep disruption in the later part of the night. And so if that's the case for you, then you need to avoid it. Same for caffeine. Some people actually, their body doesn't process it very effectively. And so you need to stop drinking the caffeine before 12 o'clock. And if possible, and if you're very sensitive to sound, you might need to use something like a fan or a white noise machine. Or you used to be able to tune a radio to be between stations to get the white noise, but just to block the outside noises, make things a bit quieter for you. So as I was saying, for individuals who experience bad dreams and nightmares, the more you worry during the day, the more likely you are to experience nightmares and trouble sleep. It's thought this is because the nightmares is your brain's way of trying to be helpful. It's trying to help you practice dealing with these difficult situations. Doesn't feel like that. Really doesn't feel like that. But in theory, that's what it's trying to do. So the suggestion is that you spend some time each day practicing what's called pleasant imagery. So thinking about nice things. And also practicing kind of purposeful planning and problem solving rather than just having things churning round and round in your head. It's actually kind of thinking, how might I be able to break the loop? Do I need some sources of information? Do I need to talk to someone? And the other thing I would add to this is staying away from psychological thrillers, either in book form or film form, because they will both make this worse. I know that from personal experience. So hints and tips for improving sleep: going to bed and getting up at a regular time. Of those two, the most important is getting up at a regular time. You can induce what's called social jet lag by staying in bed late on the weekends. There's this idea that you need to catch up on your sleep, particularly if you have to work long hours. Actually, what's better to do is to have the same getting up time all week. And then if you need to catch up on your sleep on the weekend, have a nap in the afternoon. And that's actually better for you. And you won't have that horrible social jet lag, whatever the form, whether it's socially induced or actually induced from crossing time zones, is not great. So to avoid, it's a good way of avoiding it. Have a bedtime routine. It can be very, very simple. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. And wind down before bedtime. So the last hour at least, not having any electronic devices, and just pottering about gently and doing nice things is better for you. If you're worrying and you're not asleep after 30 minutes and it's bothering you, then by all means get up and do something relaxing. Otherwise, if you're happy to stay there, then stay there. You don't have to get up if you don't want to. If you're going to exercise, by all means do, but not in the late evening, because it will stop you getting to sleep. It's normal for sleep to change throughout our life cycle and in relation to our health status and so on. And a lack of sleep for a short period of time isn't going to hurt you. The magic number is 5. If you're dropping below 5 hours a night, then you do actually need to do something about that. That's not good, and has implications in terms of your mental and physical health. And so you would need to go and see your GP and kind of talk about what options are available in your area to help you kind of manage that. Make sure your bed and bedroom are comfortable. It needs to be fairly cool, not a warm space. It needs to be dark enough. There's bedding you can get. So if you have a tendency towards night sweats, there's bedding you can get which will actually respond to your body temperature and help keep you asleep. M&S now sell a very reasonably priced range. It used to be very expensive, now it is not. If your medicines are affecting you, actually go and talk to your pharmacist in the first instance, because they're actually more knowledgeable and easier to see than GPs are, and they can give you good advice. In terms of managing stress, in terms of time management choices we make, I guess there are 4 general areas that people tend to kind of report they find stressful and difficult. So putting things off, the posh word for which is procrastination. Relying on your memory too much. Unfortunately, stress affects your memory. It reduces your memory capacity quite markedly. And that can leave you feeling really even more stressed. So not only are you stressed, you think your memory is going and you're developing dementia, and that's not great. Saying yes to too many things, and perfectionism, which also is kind of wanting everything to be perfect is not great. So if you find procrastination isn't all created equal, there are some things that actually you need some time to think it out. And so you tell yourself you're procrastinating, but actually you need the time to think about it. What can be really, really helpful is to make a list and look at what you're procrastinating over and look at why you're procrastinating about it, and then decide what things you want to do about that. And actually writing down things is really good for memory problems. It makes me laugh. People tell me that I have a brilliant memory. I don't. What I have is an information management system where I write things down because otherwise I will forget them. And not because I'm a bad person, it's just because I'm busy and I forget things. So yeah, I write things down. I have shopping lists and all kinds of lists. Basically, they help me. When I was younger, I used to think it was a bit sad needing lists, but actually I've discovered that, you know what, if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes, and that's what I will do, and it will be fine. I've noticed my husband, he had a stroke and now he's got memory problems, and he always had a really good memory, and he's really struggling because he doesn't want to have to join the list culture, but that means that he's forgetting lots of things and he's finding it really hard. It's kind of, actually, you know what, just pick up the pen and paper and do it. It will make life a lot easier for you. Having problems saying no to other people. It's really nice to help other people, and you get that warm glow from doing nice things from other people. And the warm glow that you get lasts a lot longer than it does for the person you did the nice thing for, because they also get a warm glow because you did it for them. But actually saying yes too often can be a bit of a problem. There are some people that actually, no matter what you do for them, you never please them anyway. It's kind of that. It's just, that's how the relationship goes. It's going to sound harsh, but actually you can't please all of the people all of the time. So actually just acknowledging that and stepping back from that is a good thing. It's good to let people do things for themselves. Doing everything for them can lead them to believe they're not good enough and can affect their self-esteem, and actually that's not good for them. So there's a balance to be struck between what you say yes to and what you say no to. It's okay to say people that you're overcommitted, and for persistent offenders, I found it's really helpful when they say, oh, are you sure you can't do it, to then start reeling off your to-do list, at which point they really don't want to hear your to-do lists. Their eyes will glaze over and they will leave quite quickly. It's very effective. As far as perfectionism goes, it's identifying what good enough looks like. My mum, bless her, is a housekeeping ninja. You could eat off her kitchen floor if you wanted to. You wouldn't want to eat off my kitchen floor, partly because we've got a cat. just don't go there. The kitchen floor is clean. It's good enough. Okay, you're not going to stick to it. It's not disgusting, but it's not perfect like my mum's. But then she doesn't have a cat, so it can take. Sometimes you need to go and look at other things to get a sense of what does good enough look like, because if you're a perfectionist, you don't know. And so you need to talk to other people and find out, or watch what they're doing and find out what they get away with, and then work out what you can get away with. Generally speaking, there's a principle called the Pareto principle that says 20% of your effort produces 80% of your results. The question is, do you need to put in the rest of the 80% to get to the 100%? So actually, you don't ever need to do as much of some things as you think you do. It doesn't have to be perfect all the time. Obviously, you have to choose. If you're a heart surgeon, please stick with the perfectionism. If you are not a heart surgeon, then actually, you know what, working out how clean your kitchen floor needs to be so that you don't have to clean it every day could be the way forward. Other things you can do around time management, decluttering, all the stuff you have around you kind of talks to you, it nags at you, reminds you of stuff. Some of it's good, and it reminds you of happy things, and some isn't. The stuff that isn't, it's worth kind of boxing up and putting out of sight for a bit. Dealing with post when it arrives. Looking through things you put to one side and being honest about what you're going to do with them. Having a place for everything that you keep. And little and often. 15 minutes is really important as an amount of time. Your brain actually is fine with you trying something for 15 minutes. It will not get grumpy about that. It's if you try something for 20 minutes, it kind of thinks, are you taking the mick? Particularly if it's not enjoying it. So 15 minutes it's really interesting. If you've got a job you really don't want to do and you can break it down into 15-minute chunks, you can actually get a lot of it done without having the kind of narrative in your head about the kind of mental rants that happen. So good for things you don't really want to have to do, and for things like exercise. If you're not someone who gets or finds exercise gives you energy particularly, then it's a good thing to do for that. Also, I know in the meditation books it says, start with 15 minutes and build up from there. Actually, for lots of us, 15 minutes is the limit that you should be spending in any meditation session, and you do it little and often during the day, and you start with a lot smaller than that, because actually that's how your brain works. And buy things that you use a lot, because actually it saves you time. And if you find somewhere where you can buy them cheaply, it actually saves you money as well. So in terms of managing stress, I said that resilience is actually really important. Resilience, it's not a personality trait. It's a useful way of being able to bounce back, if you like. So we all have a comfort zone. When we're little, our comfort zone is quite small because we've got a lot to learn about the world. And so as we grow, as we learn, the time plus the experiences we have mean our comfort zone gets bigger. And so we discover more about the world. We find the things we like, we find the things we don't like. Eventually there comes a point where our life kind of plateaus, if you like. And so we're not doing so many new things. And the irony is, at that point, your comfort zone actually starts to shrink. Because staying static actually isn't good for resilience. So in order to improve your bounce back ability, what you need to do is to keep topping up your comfort zone. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy at all. It can be as simple as buying a new ingredient in the supermarket to try a new recipe. It could be trying a new book by a new author. It could be listening to some music that you've not heard before by an artist you've not discovered before. It doesn't have to be anything, as I say, fancy or expensive. Could be, I sometimes go for a wander around the village and go a different way, just to go and see all the different gardens and kind of see who's planted what and what's come up, because it's interesting to see what changes there have been. It's that about promoting resilience. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. For individuals who've had some big knockbacks, so you've had significant health concerns or what have you, there are some factors that help us to build resilience over and above those kind of simple things. So there's a list here: having good problem solving skills, seeking help from others, believing that we can actually manage. We might need some help and support to do that, but we can manage it. Having connections with other people, sharing the disclosure of the trauma or the difficulties with someone that you trust. For some people, spirituality is really important, and that is not the same as religion. Spirituality, that sense of the other, is really important for some people. Having an identity or developing an identity as a survivor, as opposed to being a victim of circumstance. Helping others. And actually that's quite a common thing that we see, is that people come through difficult circumstances, and then you kind of see them on the news a lot, kind of saying, actually, this is really difficult, but we've set up this charity because we don't want other people to go through this same experience. And finding some positive meaning, and sometimes you may need some help with that from a counsellor or a psychologist to kind of help you process it and make sense of what's happened to you, and the narrative that you need to say about what happened to you, what threats you faced, how you coped with that, and what the story is about how you make meaning from what happened to you. In terms of, when I was talking about sleep, I said, we have active and passive restoration. What does active restoration look like? All kinds of simple things, really. So we're back to the simple list, kind of winding down towards the end of this talk. So simple things such as gardening or DIY, not redoing your entire house, just like little things you do, like putting up a shelf or something like that. This isn't talking about changing your house from top to bottom or ripping out the entire garden and starting again, unless that's your thing, in which case, happy days. Getting active in some way, shape or form, but active in the way that's right for you, because remember I said earlier, we're all different in terms of how we deal with what we get from physical activity. Making an effort to learn a new skill. That could be cooking, could be learning a language. Lifelong learning has been proved to be very beneficial in terms of improving our relationship with ourselves, boosting our self-esteem, our self-confidence, and actually having a positive impact in terms of how we bounce back from stress. Playing a musical instrument is very good for us, or singing. Community choirs are fabulous. A bit of philanthropy, that could be volunteering, giving to charity, but being satisfied with what you're doing. There's an interesting book by Oliver Burkeman, and he talks about how important it is to accept that you only have a limited amount of time on the earth and you can't do everything. And yes, we're facing an environmental crisis and all the other things that are going on, but there's a limit to what one individual can do. So lots and lots of my friends are busy kind of supporting their local food banks, but actually that's not how I do my charity work. And for ages I was thinking, oh, I'm really bad because I should be doing that. And then it occurred to me, I read Oliver Burkeman's book and thought, actually, you know what, I'm really happy with how I'm giving back and volunteering and doing my charity things. I don't have to do the food bank thing as well. It's okay for me to do it in a different way, that I can kind of fit in with what I'm doing. And getting curious and living in the moment, and kind of keeping a gratitude list. So the gratitude list is usually 3 things, where you experience something that was some kind of positive feeling. And the idea is that in recalling it, you reactivate the memory. And then when you read the list the following morning, you kind of strengthen those memories. It kind of helps with the kind of the stress management. When you first start doing it, though, 3 is a lot. And so 1, that you kind of just sit and kind of, it's much better for you to be ruminating about the one positive thing than all of the other stuff. It will help you in terms of sleep, etc. And obviously, if you've got any hobbies or interests, if it's possible, and they're not on this list, then they're really important in terms of active restoration, whether that's knitting, painting, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Those hobbies and interests, stamp collecting, cat, I don't know, getting train numbers. And meditation. So I remember back before I was a psychologist, my GP, I went to see him because I was having lots of symptoms and I didn't understand them. And he said, "You're stressed, you need to relax." And in some level, yes, he's right. I'm not saying that he was wrong, but actually I put an awful lot of effort into learning meditation, and I upped my yoga practice and all the rest of it. Didn't actually address the fact that part of the reason I was really stressed was that my time management strategies, my habit of relying on my memory was what was causing the problem. And actually, once I developed an information management system, my stress levels reduced quite markedly. So yes, the relaxation is important. I'm not saying it's not, but I also needed to do something else as well. And the GP never said that. So I spent a lot of time, effort, and money on the relaxation component, and then realized myself that actually, this other thing I really need to do. So relaxation, it takes different forms for different people. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. Lots of people kind of say, oh, meditation is not for me. That's fine. Having some kind of quiet time where you decompress can actually be important. So just sitting on a bench, you don't have to do anything when you're on the bench. Just sit on the bench for a few minutes with a cup of tea or whatever. It's good for you. A few minutes of regular quiet time is more beneficial to your stress response than doing longer periods of time, but not so often. So you're trying to look for something that's little and often, and you've got to be sure that it's something you want to do, because if you're doing it with a bad attitude, then quiet time in a natural setting, and these days we call it green therapy or blue therapy. So green therapy is green stuff, it's for trees, etc. Blue therapy is where there's water involved. Using some kind of guided relaxation technique. Again, I would recommend Insight Timer. They've got lots of guided relaxation things on there. They're all free. You can try them out, see what works for you. And they do them at different lengths. So they've got 1-minute ones all the way up to an hour or more. So you can play with it. You definitely, if you've not done it before, start at the short end. Don't overwhelm yourself. Do 10 minutes, go, this isn't for me. 10 minutes when you first start is too long. You need to start small. So some kind of guided relaxation will help in terms of giving you some idea what to do, because some people feel a bit of a spare part, sat by a tree, not doing anything. It's kind of having someone kind of say, okay, so pay attention to your breathing, look at the sky, listen to the leaves, actually gives you something to focus on and kind of makes it feel a bit less like you kind of, gone a bit strange. So quiet time is just simply about choosing a nice focus. It could be anything at all. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. I've planted up our front garden so that it's got flowers in it all year round, so that when I go out there and sit on the bench with the cat, I have nice flowers to look at, and I sit and look at the sky and I watch the clouds and so on. It's nothing grand, but actually it's turned out that that's really important. So quiet time, very simple, and it's one component. So you wouldn't just use this by itself. All of the other things I've talked about, it's a pick and mix. And hopefully there has been something in this that will help you in some way, shape or form, give you an idea about where you might want to start. You might want to talk to someone. The Pituitary Foundation has got helplines where you can get help and support, and other materials available for you as well. So thank you for listening. Thank you for your time and attention. I hope that has been at the least interesting and hopefully useful.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sue. That's awesome. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you to Sue for joining us and bringing all of their brilliant expertise and tips. Hopefully you found something useful in that. I know I certainly did. And thank you to all of you for joining us. All of our sessions will be available to watch on YouTube and on our website right after this. And please feel free to head over to our social media channels and to our website to see all of the other sessions available in the upcoming month, as well as some more resources as Sue outlined. We are really proud to bring you a month's worth of different informative workshops and online sessions for free, but we do rely heavily on the very kind donations of supporters. So if you found this session useful and are able to do so, please consider donating to the Pituitary Foundation by texting Living Well 10 to 785 to donate £10. Text top cost £10 plus one standard rate message. It should just pop up at the screen here. Don't forget to check out the rest of our Awareness Month programme and buy your tickets. They are free, or the option to donate. Thank you again for all of you for joining, and thank you to Sue, and we hope to see you at our next session soon.